All right. Hello. Hi, Noah.
Hello. Hi, Brooke.
Hi. Welcome, everyone. Okay. We are talking today about, well, I guess I'll back up and say the background of this episode is, looking at in everything that we talk about, it's a lot about exploring a higher consciousness, hence our name of our entire podcast of Raising the New Earth. So with that, Noah and I kind of had an idea of an episode of talking about the Age of Aquarius and looking at the astrological perspective of, are we moving into a time of a different higher level of consciousness? And as we were taking notes and doing things, Noah had the great idea of interviewing Miriam Ashkenazi, which if you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode, I highly recommend listening to that. We go into all things astrology and really from like the Kabbalistic perspective of looking at things that have happened over the last few years and just how you can bring forth those sort of aspects into your life. So it was a beautiful episode. And with that, we also, have so many fascinating things to say ourselves about what we've kind of learned about astrology and looking at things from, I guess, a higher perspective to really make a little bit more sense of our world. So with that, I'll kind of just say that I'm really connecting with this idea of, and I know I've brought this into the podcast before, but like that oftentimes we hear science and God being like completely two separate things. And in reality, they're so intertwined together that really science is God. And I think that astrology can be looked at in that very same realm. So, it's often looked at as being something separate from God, or it's looked at as a pseudoscience and, just something that you could look to for fun. But in taking a deeper look, it really seems to me that astrology can be a beautiful understanding and intersection of God and science. So, in modern culture, astrology is brought up as your sun sign horoscope. And, you can look at it and, tells you kind of like what you can expect. And, you also hear a lot of phrases like, oh, Mercury is in retrograde and no wonder my life is crazy right now. But really that's just scratching the surface of what astrology really has to offer us. And essentially, it's way more complex than looking at your sun sign to understand your personality. And if you take a step back from that, you can look at astrology as just a way to really understand the natural world. Because at its core, astrology explains the configuration of energy in our solar system based on the planetary alignments. So we all know that Earth has an energy field, which is referred to as like the geomagnetic field, and that expands out of our atmosphere into space. And then, of course, the other planets also have their own magnetic fields. So, when you look, for instance, to Saturn and Jupiter, both of these planets are much larger than planet Earth. So, of course, they have a correspondingly large energy field around them as well. And then, when you look at the individual level, as humans, we have an electromagnetic field, the largest generating from our heart. It's about 60 times greater in amplitude than the electrical activity generated in our brain, which is crazy. So from a purely scientific standpoint, it makes complete sense that these different fields are going to interact with each other. And this energy will change based on planetary positioning within our solar systems and us as being electrical beings ourselves and with our own energy and vibration, that our energy fields are going to react and respond to that too. So I just think that's like such a beautiful way to really understand that this really is a science and it really is like something that you can take a lot of spiritual meaning from as well.
That is so beautiful. And that's absolutely right. So we are electromagnetic beings, and the sun is the sun and the earth. We got the magnetics of the earth. We got the electric from the sun, and us being influenced by the star and what is going on right now on the electromagnetic field. makes a lot of sense why, I've been feeling the shift a little bit in my personal and professional life, and we're going to talk a little bit later about that as well. As far as the Hebrew month is concerned and its correlation to the sign of Aquarius, so right now we're going through the Hebrew month of Shvat. We just celebrated Tu B'Shvat, which is the birthday for the trees. It's a new year for the trees, and that correlates with the astrological sign of Aquarius, which is an air sign. And it is actually the third of the air signs. We got Gemini, we got Libra, and we got Aquarius. And the Zohar, which is the book that the Kabbalah studies from, says all the celestial treasures and the hidden riddles that have not been solved for generations will be discovered in the age of Aquarius, which is creating a lot of expectation and a lot of anticipation around spiritual beings. And then when we go deeper, we really notice that direct correlation that you mentioned before about nature and God, because nature in Hebrew is hateva. That's how we say nature in Hebrew, has the same numerological value as the word God, and in Hebrew it's Elohim. So they each have 86, which for me, the way that I like interpreting it is, well, we are part of nature. And when you get to connect with nature, you get to connect with the divine. When you get to connect with the divine, you get to connect with that spark of light, the divinity within yourself, then later resonates and vibrates throughout the world, right? So for me, that connection that you talked about before, from nature to the divine to ourselves, there's no wonder why we feel every little shift of electromagnetic sign and ripple that we feel around us. So have you been feeling anything different lately, Brooke?
Hold on. Can we pause it, or I can edit it. She's calling for me. Yes, I have definitely felt energetic shifts over the last couple years. I think that it felt extremely intense for me at points, and I can't not look at what was happening with me personally, just in being a mother. And like, of course, there's going to be shifts with that, being, not being a mother and then becoming a mother. But I really feel like it was intensified with just all of what's been going on in the world. And I think this is why I love talking about this, or part of the reason why is because I was able to, I think because I had already kind of been down a path of really looking into deeper spiritual meanings on things, and just that journey to those places, that the past 2 years has just amplified it for me. And I'm so thankful for what has come out of everything that I have been awakened to, and like felt like I needed to essentially really rely on God and rely on spirit to get me through particular instances. And so looking back, it's like I see how all of that chaos, or what seemed to be just really low points, or times where I just felt, like I needed something more, that I was able to dig deeper and find that. And looking on the other side of it, I feel more connected in, and just able to look at things almost automatically on a higher perspective. Not saying that it's all the time, like I definitely will see myself kind of getting in the trenches on things, but I feel like I'm able to, I guess, get out of it faster and really understand what kind of deeper meaning I can get from that. So yes, I definitely feel like I felt that. And I think that's why, just looking at all of the references to this idea of moving into a different age in time, and this higher consciousness level, to me, it like makes it so much more beautiful that like this is just the way it was always supposed to be, and that as a human race and we had to go through what we went through, and we will continue to go through a lot of seemingly hardships and things that are painful. But if we can continue to elevate higher, that there's so much beauty waiting on the other side of it. So yeah, I completely connect in with that and use that in my daily life very deeply. And I always love when you bring in the numerology, because again, when you were talking about nature and that being so connected to God, and we've heard Dr. Zach say and see it all around us, where we've separated ourselves from nature. We've literally written ourselves out of the equation of natural systems. And in doing so, I think it's also very apparent that we've also separated ourselves from God and from our own divinity and that connection in. So I always love, like, when we're looking at spiritual concepts or spiritual perspectives, like, where is that connection point in? And that's why I think nature is like such a powerful connection point in, because if you can just find yourself in nature, and if you can just allow yourself to be present with what is happening in nature, just looking at the trees, looking at the breeze, watching the birds, that you can begin to connect in with that kind of eternal presence and make sense of things from a larger scale, I guess. So yeah, I think that all of that is just so beautiful. For you, how do you interpret the last couple of years, or how have you felt it in your life?
So for me, I feel that, Jewish mysticism talks about the 99% and the 1%. The 99% is where we should be. That's the infinite. And the 1% is where we are. It's the realm of chaos, the realm of illusion, the realm of fear. So I always go back to the thought that I know that from the time that men ate the fruit from the tree of knowledge, we haven't been able to see the existence of the oneness that stands behind all things. And we haven't been able to see the existence of oneness that is within us. And I see it in my daily life, because there would be days where I try to match my frequency and match my energetic levels to the potential that the universe is there to deliver me with. And some days I just feel that push against it. Like, what am I not doing right? Or what can I do better in order to bring more of the gifts into my life? And that's why for me, I feel like there's literally a shift, like I'm standing on a platform, and it's shifting a little bit to the right, shifting a little bit to the left. So I just remind myself to be kind, to be patient. And after reading a lot of Dolores Cannon, who we're going to talk about later on in the show, and her work as someone who worked with a lot of people that experience past life. She's a regressive hypnotherapist and a psychic researcher. What she said has really spoken and resonated with me. She talks about shifting dimensions all the time. Like, she gives an example of, losing keys. She said that if you ever lose your keys or lose something, it's because it's in a different dimension. So sometimes she would go around the house, and if she loses her keys, she will, say, "Hey, come on, guys, bring it back." Like, she'll speak, out loud to whatever. "Come on, guys, just bring it back." So she says we have multiple dimensions all the time, and that we switch between dimensions. So sometimes I really feel that with the power of the mind, being the electromagnetic creatures that we are, we do have the ability to switch to a different realm. We do have the ability to tap in something that, may be better or may be worse for us. But we're going to talk about it later, about what does that mean, shifting into a new earth, and what's going to happen to the old earth. But for me right now, I wanted to talk about like the geometry and mathematics of the Age of Aquarius. So when I dug deeper, I saw a lot of these um, beautiful designs, including the Merkaba, which is part of the Kabbalah, but it shows the existence of the creator existing through everything. And you can change the word creator for divinity. You can change it to force, the light, whatever is comfortable. But to me, I'm absolutely aware of this huge energy that is existing within our universe. So I remember when we talked to the Kabbalistic astrologist, you mentioned her, Miriam Ashkenazi, she talked about the tree of life. And the tree of life is the key to the entire universe and all the dimensions and creations. And for these symbols, we see that those geometrical patterns that are spread all over the world, these are those patterns in quantum physics that are explained through quantum physics. They give us the cosmic DNA, and it's unavoidable. So we either going to go with the flow, educate ourselves what is about to happen, or we'll be left behind. And so right now we see like Saturn is the planet of judgment and order, responsibility, discipline, while Uranus elevates us to new consciousness and new concepts that are beyond the limit. And this is why the age of Aquarius and the month of Aquarius are considered times of change. Both are times of new knowledge, inventions, humanity, charity. And even though the age of Aquarius began about 400 years ago, it is still considered to be the age of revelation, and we're still going through that. So some would ask, why does Aquarius symbolize redemption? Well, because Aquarians, and if you know any Aquarians, they perceive the world as unified, and redemption and being and having unity, when we reach the time of true unity, that is when we'll no longer see negativity in the world. The negativity will be cleansed and humanity will be free of every evil and fragmentation that we can think about. And because of Aquarians' higher level of consciousness, they are directly linked to this moment of cleansing. So I think it's like this whole idea of cleansing and astrology and new earth is so fascinating, because to me sometimes it explains why I feel things that I can't put into words.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the what I was really fascinated by too when in researching this episode is how deeply tied the Bible even is to astrology. And I know with having Miriam on, she talked a lot about this, like with, and you just mentioned it, like the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. And, you know, that speaks to the story of Adam and Eve. Um, Abraham, you know, was thought to be an astrologer,
Mm-hmm.
from what I understand. And then also, the sons of Jacob, who are 12, like if you look at their personalities or ways of being, like that can also be tied to astrological symbols. So I just, to me, that's so beautiful, because I think, at least from my background, you know, in Christianity and understanding the Old Testament, a lot of it is taken so literal. And we talked about this with Miriam, with the tree of knowledge and the tree of life, that like that to me, like I never really understood the story of Adam and Eve from that deep of a level, but like, and just to kind of summarize, like the tree of, it's kind of the idea of, you know, you can either take your pain and suffering and grow and learn from it and kind of like continue to repeat those patterns of the suffering, and or, you know, you can really elevate higher out of your suffering. Am I
Mm-hmm.
saying that kind
Yeah.
of in the, so it's really this idea of, as we were just saying, like taking the chaos and taking the struggles and all of the quote unquote bad things that are happening, and just continuing to replay them. And you see that throughout humanity, like really history, it just plays itself out over and over and over again. And so I love the idea that we as humans are now reaching a point where we can evolve out of it. And it takes that, like, I think, initial elevation and vibration and an elevation in consciousness. And then as that kind of spreads, then more people are able to move out of that suffering perspective. So, and even looking at the New Testament, you know, and I don't know if there's really ties to it, but it spoke really beautiful to me that Jesus at one point talks about going into the house, and I wrote it down. I'm not an expert at biblical passages, but essentially that go into the house with the man with the water jug, and that is a representation of the age of Aquarius. And so you know, the other really cool thing about that too is that Jesus, you know, is kind of thought of the fisher of men, and we've been in the age of Pisces for the last like 2,000 years. So you can kind of make that connection. And again, I'm kind of like to look at things as like there's really no coincidences, or and that there's always deeper meanings and understandings of things like that. So to me, it's like it's just this beautiful evolution that we're moving into a place. And when you look at ages, there's a transition period, right? And it feels super messy, like whenever we're doing any sort of transition and changing into a different way of being. So, you know, I think that's where you can really look at all of this upheaval, and it just in the last few years it feels like it's more and more and more, and a lot of it is like, okay, well, what are we being, you know, fed? I think that chaos has always existed, and you know, you can kind of start to question what it, you know, what we pay attention to is what we're being told to be paying attention to in one sense, but no doubt that, like, I think that a lot of people have been questioning a lot of things, and a lot of, I think there's been a lot of, at least from my perspective, I think a lot of people feeling that they do want to understand a higher level to all of this, and that there's really been this kind of plugging back into that higher energy source. And again, like you were saying, like you can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it higher self, but it's that wanting to desire, I guess, to be at those higher levels. And so how beautiful that it really actually does correlate as well with what's been said for ages, that we're moving into this time of like deeper understanding and deeper knowledge. So
yeah.
it's
And
awesome.
And you mentioned Abraham, that we touched upon a little bit with Miriam. Yes, Abraham was a great philosopher. And yeah, I believe from what I've been studying as a little girl, even, that he was an astrologer, and that the Talmud teaches us that he held great astrology in his heart. And everyone, all the kings in the East and the West, came at his door for him to, you know, predict their astrology. And he moved to a city by the name Haran at the age of 75, and God spoke to him for the first time, and God said to him, Lech Lecha. That means you're going to leave your house. Lech Lecha, you're going to go. And when God spoke and revealed himself to Abraham, one of the first things that he mentioned to him was his fate, and that he mentioned that his descendants transcended the influence of the constellation. So he didn't need to be concerned with astrological predictions for his family. And according to the Jewish stream of Kabbalah, Abraham also wrote Sefer Yetzirah, the book of formation that the Jewish mysticism relies heavily on. There is also a Talmudic teaching that teaches us that Abraham had so many gifts when it came to his prediction and constellation prediction, that his ways of teaching traveled to the east, and which then spread to Eastern Asia. And so now we think back, and it's no wonder that many of the Eastern religions find parallels to Kabbalistic teachings. Like I find Buddhism to be very close to Kabbalah. I find when I study the teachings of Tao, I find it to be very close to Kabbalah, and it's one of the most striking examples of this, you know, that every child knows that a magician uses the phrase abracadabra. And this magical expression of, taking the wand and saying abracadabra, it's actually from Aramaic, which is the most ancient language of the Bible. And abra means I will create, and kadabra means as I will speak. So the knowledge of creation using letters and names, these are the words that are documented in Sefer Yetzirah that Abraham wrote. So it's all
Wow.
connected. We're all connected.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And even looking at it from a Christian perspective, like the more that I learned about Jesus Christ and really looking at the words that he said, I could tie that so much to what I was learning through yoga, kind of taking that more Eastern philosophy. And so that's where I really connected back in to actually the words of Jesus and the teachings of Jesus. And, I think everyone has to come to their own understandings and their own backgrounds. But for me, I was able to connect back in with Jesus through really understanding that at the core, again, it's all saying the same thing and that it's all coming from the same source, which is so beautiful. Yeah. But I think, I mean, but looking at, again, the Age of Aquarius, that is what that is. I think it's like, we've had for years, many, I mean, and I'm like the history of the world, like, in the Old Testament, that time, and even before that, there was suffering in all scales. And I think especially, I don't know of the exact historical references, but I do know that like with Jesus, a lot of more formal religions came about. And with that came a lot of fighting and wars. And so again, it's beautiful that maybe we are moving out of it and realizing that like we're all one and it's all connected. So
There's a book by the name Aquarius, Herald of the Golden Age, and it talks about that the age of Aquarius is really the entrance into the golden age. And what it says that humankind, as conceived by cosmic intelligence, is such that if they are to be fulfilled, if we are to be fulfilled, we must connect with the light and the power of the higher world. And if not, if we put our trust in our own limited faculties, our senses, or whatever we hear, right, we will be unable to see what's ahead, and our blindness will make drastic errors in our paths. And if we put our trust and our faith in technology, trade, and material development, sooner or later we will fail. It says because our actions are based on the desire to control the world, regardless of the plan and purpose of cosmic intelligence. It will stir up the psychic and physical layers of the atmosphere, and hostile forces will turn against humankind in their fury. So that is kind of like what we talk about, tilting the conscious scale, this huge scale that I always imagine. This is the analogy that I like to give. It's like if we put our trust and our faith in, yes, the electronics are amazing. They can be amazing if it's used for good. And yes, what we see can be partially true, but is it the whole truth? When you take a cup and you fill it with water, half is water, half is not. What statement is true? The cup is half full, or the cup is half empty? What is the truth? And do we really know what we're seeing, or is it also a result of our upbringing? Right? Is having no money a good thing, a bad thing? Does this bring happiness? Like, it's an illusion, right? It is all an illusion.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, I'm losing my train of thought of where I was going with that. It's like when you really go boil it down, like 99% of reality is actually unseen, and that's coming from the atomic level. Like 99.9% I think of an atom is space. So it's like we see the material world and think that's all there is, and it's moving us into a place where, is that all there is, or where can I tap into the places of unseen and find like that as the true reality, I guess, in a sense. And moving back, like it's like we are like looking at where we are today, like we are so, you know, scientifically quote unquote advanced, and you know, we can send people out into space and have all of this technology that can connect us. However, like, where is it leading us? And can we really control the natural environment, like you were saying? And I think that we're kind of in many ways waking up to the limitations of technology, and that maybe we do need to tap into that deeper sense of reality. And when you look at quantum physics and quantum mechanics, these are very smart people who are researching this, and yet they will tell you there's so much question still that they don't know. Like at the atomic level, you know, there's theories that have been put forth, and you know, you can dive into that and really see that like it's man trying to make sense of the world, but realizing I don't think that from the scientific perspective that not everyone is there, but I think that if you can take the spiritual angle of that, it's like, well, yes, we are so limited in understanding, like that ultimately there is such a larger game at hand, or a larger picture at hand, and that is like the divinity and the energies of the entire universe. And you know, we're just kind of little players in that. So it's really cool, all of it.
Yeah.
To...
And they keep talking about the new earth being that something that we can go towards, we can go on instead of beginning again. And what it says is that the earth, just like water and trees, is a living being, and we forget that it's a living being, and it is getting ready to move to its next incarnation, like people do, if you believe in reincarnation. And this is what we call the new earth. So as the earth is moving to another dimension, that fifth dimension, if we want to go to that fifth dimension, and again, like we're not talking about something super drastic, we're talking about a seamless transition. But those who want to go to that fifth dimension are going to have to change their vibration and frequency to match the earth. Scientists who are listening to the earth's frequency and tone said it's been speeding up. The tone is higher and the frequency is sped up. So it's something that they haven't heard in a few years. So they hear it and they see it from a scientific standpoint. And so in the book of Revelation, it mentions that the new heaven and the new earth, and it says that some will be left and some will go, and that it is all part of us moving to the new earth. And others talk about thousands years of peace. So the earth, because it's a living being and it's going through a trauma, it's going through its own trauma. The tsunami, the earthquakes are said to all be a cleanser from us, like a dog shaking its fleas off, which makes some sense considering that we've been abusing and working to destroy the earth for a long time now. And currently sitting on the 4D, 4 dimension, just means that we have to work harder in order to seemingly move to the 5D, and those that will not work on themselves will be left behind, just left in their in their lower frequency, lower vibration, with their negativity. And that's why I hear a lot of people say, hey, I just want to be with like-minded people. So to me, that clicked right away. What does that mean? I want to be with people who are working to improve themselves, who are working to be not as judgmental to ours, kind, looking for solutions for the planet, not being in a hurry to kick something on the ground instead of picking it up. Love thy neighbor as yourself. So to me, when I say like-minded people, now it makes sense to me that I want to move. I want all my loved ones to move to the fifth dimension. Who wants to live in the sense of chaos all the time? But we are the contributors of that. We are the ones who brought the land to where it is right now. And we talked about it with Christine, right?
Yeah. I think that's so cool to see that, like, literally the Earth's frequencies are changing, and that it makes sense in what we're seeing, like in all of the natural disasters. And like, yes, like humans, we've abused the Earth, but it's almost like for us to, like, the Earth is going to be okay with or without, like, it's like you were saying, a dog shaking its fleas off. Like it is like that. It's like it's going there's this beautiful balance that's always going to be there. And if we're not going to, if we as humans aren't going to participate in keeping that balance restored, Mother Earth will make sure it is in balance with or without us. And
right.
That makes I resonate on such a deep level with this fifth dimension idea, not saying I'm there or not there, but I do think that I've been very intentional with where I allow my energy to go. And I don't like to turn on the news very often. Not that I don't care about what's going on, but my reality is what is in front of me and what I can create out of it, and the energy that I can bring forth to it. And that's where I want most of my focus to be. Because if I'm sitting there staring at a television at all of these terrible things that are happening, and I'm feeling horrible, and what am I supposed to do about this? This is terrible. We're all doomed. What is that really doing? Like, it's
right.
not helping. So yeah, I think I really want to learn more about, Dolores Cannon and some of her works, because that sounds very fascinating to me. That's cool.
Yeah. She specifically talked about 12 things that we can be aware of starting now. She said, we mentioned it, that the Earth frequencies are changing, and as our bodies are changing to the new frequencies of the Earth, our cells are receiving new instructions. And this may explain why so many people around me as well are hearing high-pitched frequencies. They keep saying, I hear this, myself included, I hear like this high-pitched frequency, but I don't have any chronic illness. I took care of that years ago. So that's really strange. So that was the first thing she said. The second thing she said, people who go to the source, basically people who die, return to the Earth with purpose. So the reason why some people reincarnated in this lifetime is what she found out through her regressive hypnotherapy, is that they mentioning to her that I'm here to help. There's something I'm supposed to do. So those who came to this particular point in time are here to help us ascend. Another thing she said is like, our purpose on the planet is to help each other, which we discussed before. I mean, we are meant to help each other. And you can write a new contract. So something that we learn about the burn letter, if you are not happy with your current life, you can tell yourself, I don't want this contract anymore. Because there's a belief that when we were sold, we were given the plan of where we are going. So we chose where we're going, and that followed with a purpose. So it was like a contract. But once we come out in this physical realm, we no longer remember. There's a really beautiful story about how the guardian angel gives us a kiss, and once it gives us a kiss, we forget what we came here to do. That's why we keep looking for the manual of life, which we don't remember. And so you can write a new contract. You can literally say, I don't want this contract anymore. And you can write up your own contract and rip it up. And essentially, you're forgiving yourself. So the burn letter is the same thing. If you have any labels, if you have any discouragement that you have collected throughout your life, put it in a letter and burn it safely. Just let go. Let go of the guilt, let go of the shame, let go of the labels, let go of the diagnostics, let it go. Another thing she mentioned is to not get caught up of the illusion of what's happening. That's exactly what we talked about. So in other words, don't let the economy, politics, etc., control you. Don't be afraid. It's an illusion. I know it's hard to understand that. And it's not that we don't know what is going on. I'm very familiar with what is going on around the world. And we talked to Yela about it. But that sense of helplessness, that sense of fear is not helping your frequency, nor is it helping anyone around the world. But that idea of helping the person that you can reach right next to you or across the street from you, that allows for a higher vibration instead of fear and politics, whatever not. Another point is that our DNA is being changed. So we're at the point where we're hoping that will no longer be sickness and immortality will be the norm, which is something that Kabbalah talks about a lot in the Age of Aquarius. Those who get stuck in the negativity, they will stay in the 4D planet here. They will not come to the new Earth because the new Earth will not have any negativity. And instead, they will be sent after they're done with their purpose here, they will be sent to another planet that is experiencing negativity to work their negativity out. And the last thing she mentioned is she said that our world will not be aware of the other after ascension. So the old Earth will still be here, vibrating at its lower frequency, but the new Earth is moving to another dimension, vibrating so fast that it becomes invisible to those on the previous Earth.
That's so cool. I have read a little bit on the law of one, and I don't know a lot about it, but so much of what you said echoes a lot of what is said in the law of one, which is like this channeled source. And it talks about how like essentially, and they actually I think said a particular year, like maybe 2012, or it may have even been more recent than that, but like essentially that children born after this time actually have the ability to hold a higher frequency, like they are kind of that frequency, and not that they're all like that, but I just, I think that that's so cool to think, and like it just makes so much sense to me on so many levels, and it's just an amazing way to look at things. And I know that like if you're very fundamentally Christian, you may not take this view, but to me, like when the book of Revelations talks about the second coming of Christ, I bring that very synonymously with what you were talking about with Dolores Cannon and with the law of one. It is to me, it is like not, I mean, because let's be honest, if Jesus actually came down in his true self, would anybody really believe it? Like it's right. To me, that it makes so much more beautiful sense to see the second coming of Christ as being, we're all raising to that vibration of Christ's consciousness, that we're all understanding the unity of it all. And we're all seeing that we can be the light that Jesus so beautifully talked about. And just how, and we talked about it with the episode in Yaela, and like what you said, we can sit there and be overcome with all of this craziness of what's going on in the world, or we can go right out in our own backyard and help our neighbor next door. Like where can you be that ripple effect and shine your light? And yeah, it's so cool. Yeah, all of the connections.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned a quote by Albert Einstein. If you want to share, I really liked what you found.
Oh, yes. Did I have it in my notes there?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me look, because
And you also mentioned that Carl Jung, the father of modern psychology, he used astrology all the time, which I really like because I learned about him in my undergrad.
yes. Well, why am I not seeing these notes? I'm going to cut this out. Yeah, well, Carl Jung, like I don't know very much about Carl Jung. Like I haven't delved into any of his writings. I just remember learning about him briefly in psychology class, but
Mm-hmm.
I know that he was a huge fan of astrology. He used a lot of archetypes and understanding that. So it's just another connection point to me. It's like that's even bringing in the psychology. It's like you've got science, you've got
Right.
spirituality, you've got astrology, and then you've got psychology, and it's like, oh, it's beautifully interwoven into this beautiful piece. And as far as Albert Einstein, and again, moving backwards a bit, or not backwards a bit, but like talking about science, like quantum physics, again, like if you really delve into it, it will make you realize that there's so much that we don't understand. And even Albert Einstein himself, who was like brilliant and known, throughout history as like one of our geniuses of the world, even he recognized the divinity in in everything. So hold on, let me find that quote, because I do want to share it here. Where did I have it?
So until you share it with us, because
Yeah.
I have it here, I can also share if you want.
Yeah, why
But
don't you read it?
okay, so I'll share. So the quote that Brooke wanted to share with you is by Albert Einstein. It goes, "The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. He to whom the emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. His eyes are closed." That is so beautiful. And this is from an essay he wrote in 1931, "The World as I See It." Like, how amazing is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, it's like in all of the science and understanding that Albert Einstein, discovered that at the end of his life, he saw that the most beautiful thing out of all of it is the mysterious, and
Mm-hmm.
that is the source of all. Yeah. That came from an entire essay that he wrote. And you can find the whole essay. I'll link to it in the show notes, but it's just it's so beautiful. And again, like my kind of current passion is just seeing science and spirit as the same thing. And
Yeah, they're not opposing forces. They go hand in hand. And in fact, science is playing catch up with nature and spirit, because there's so much that we don't know. We just put a label to something, but in reality, we don't really know how it works.
exactly, which is what the Age of Aquarius is calling us to. It's like it's been there the whole time. Like quantum physics has been there the whole time. God has been there the whole time. It's now we're reaching a
Right.
capacity where we can understand it fully from all angles. And
Exactly.
yeah.
And you also mentioned Abraham and his sons, and yes, we have 12 astrological signs that are divided into season and elements. Now the Hebrew calendar goes by the moon, and the Gregorian calendar is something different. So every sign in the 12 astrological signs is distinct because it possesses two Hebrew letters that were created and one of the Hebrew tribes that came from Abraham. And in the universe, we say to have four elements. We have water, fire, air, and earth. And we also have four seasons, where every season represents one of God's four-letter names. And Jehovah is one of the names and one of the four elements. So every element holds a different characteristics. Water is known to be having a characteristic of feeling, giving, and mercy. And in fact, before the Shabbat comes on Friday evening, before we welcome Saturday, we actually welcome Saturday on Friday evening, we do a mikveh. What is a mikveh? A mikveh is when we dip our body in a container of water. It can be a jacuzzi, can be a swimming pool, but we believe that water is healing, so much so that we're cleansing ourselves to welcome the Sabbath. And we also know that water fasting is being used to cleanse our body from pathogens, whether it's a short water fasting or a longer water fasting, to be super effective in cleansing our body from different illnesses. And then you have the element of fire, which represents lack, creativity, and rush. I'm a Leo and I have a lot of fire in me. And that's why I'm so happy that my partner is not, because I'm go, go, go. I'm super creative, always, have ideas, always want to do more, 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 more. There's no rest for Leos. And then you have the air sign. We just talked about it, Age of Aquarius. So we got wisdom, intellect, personal communication. These are part of the characteristics of air. And then you have earth, materialism, execution, and stability. I have two family members who fall into this category of earth. Speaking spirituality to them is, you might as well just speak it to a deaf person, because it's not gonna work.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I'm a Pisces, which is, water sign, and also Pisces are just known to be a little always out there a bit, like not. And actually, when you were talking about the keys, to bring it back to the keys and what Dolores Cannon said of, I always lose my keys, and I'm like, oh man, I must be visiting different dimensions all the time. Like, I'm just entering in and out of this dimension. I was like, I resonate. Yeah. But yeah, it's so fascinating, like all of the ties to that. And with that too, like, Abraham and all of the astrology there with the Old Testament, like when you look back at ancient civilizations, they all used astrology. Like, you have the Mayan calendar and the ancient Babylonians and the Chinese astrology. It was such a part of their lives. And again, I think that like we moved into this time where we got so scientifically advanced that it separated us from nature. And it's kind of cool because we're now entering a time where we can look at like bringing ourselves back together with nature, and that there's so much we can connect with in our world from a micro level, like out in nature, and then also to the planetary levels to understand ourselves on a deeper level, individually and collectively.
Beautifully said. Yeah. And I would personally end with a quote that I came across by Alan Watts, who was the writer of The Way of Zen. And he dealt with a lot of philosophical fundamentals and history of Zen Buddhism. And he said, reality is just an agreed upon illusion. All is one. And when we look, we're not that different, right? I'm not that different from, the woman in India, or the man in Russia, or the child in Ukraine. I'm not that different. We're all connected. So whether we want to admit it or not, we have something we have something similar to every one of our brothers and sisters that are walking that planet. And so if we are looking forward to moving to this fifth dimension, then we got to work a little harder on ourselves. Not to be hard on ourselves, but to work towards understanding that we just don't know what we don't know. And maybe if we are going to be a bit more open-minded, we'll discover a world that is better than, and that exceeds any of every expectation that we had.
Yeah. Beautifully put. It really is. It's like a shift in perspective that's available to us at any time. And it can take us kind of quantum leaps in a sense to understanding ourselves and knowing that we're far more connected than we may realize on the plane of reality.
Exactly. That summarizes it. No, Brooke?
I think so. Yeah. All right.
All right. Well, bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
I usually